Some start to the Test series. Day one is completed at the Adelaide Oval of this day-night test between India and Australia. And what a day for India, having won the toss, having taken their time to get things going. Mitchell Starc setting the story for Australia at the second ball wicket of Prithvi Shaw. Pujara did his thing. Kohli played a gritty little innings, and it all looked good until that run out in that last session. We'll discuss all of it on our end of day show on ESPN Cricket for Matchday. Akash Chopra is here. He has been all day. Tom Moody joins us as well. I think it's a good time to bring in perspective from both sides. Let's just look back at that and just take the first feeling at the end of day one. What is that first feeling, Akash, for you?
Well, India won the toss, did the right thing, that was to bat first, but were a little slow for the majority of that day's play, and in the end have squandered some of the advantage that comes with winning the toss and batting first. I think Australia are slightly ahead in this game.
Okay, does Tom Moody go with that? I'll just put the numbers in perspective session-wise. 2 for 41 in the first session of play in 25 overs, then 1 for 66 in 30 overs. So they did go along at a fairly slow pace. And then in that last session, 126 runs for 3 wickets, which leaves them at 233 for 6. Now, Akash says slight advantage to Australia. Tom, how would you look back at it?
Yeah, look, I would say a little bit more than slight, to be honest with you. I think India were well set up, and then obviously the captain's run out was a significant turning point in the game, because at that point they were very much in control, and the acceleration of their partnership and the Indian innings was just about in full flight, and they would have then reaped the reward of all that hard work. So, you know, I would think out of the two teams, Australia would be certainly more happier in the dressing rooms this evening than what India would be.
We have to just talk about that straight away. The Rahane and Kohli mix-up, the wicket of the Indian captain, partnership of 88 of 168 between them. The second new ball was less than 3 overs away, and it didn't look like, Akash, at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, that where the wicket was going to come from. Both batsmen seemed to look more and more comfortable, were moving along nicely. Can you explain that moment? What has happened in that moment?
See, firstly, it was a double whammy because, of course, Virat Kohli was well set, and he was, and we know if he's set, he doesn't throw his wicket away. And if he was there, things would have looked a lot different. And he tends to go on to score big centuries. Adelaide is his favorite hunting ground. But then, if you're only 3 overs shy of the second new ball, you lose your main batsman at that point in time to a horrible mix-up. Then it just goes downhill from there. So it was the most important moment of this day's play. Could actually turn out to be the most important event in the entire test matches, rather in this entire test match of all 5 days. What happened? I think at that point in time, they had already started looking for those singles. They were actually moving around quite nicely. Just one bad mix-up. The moment Rahane played that ball, he knew that there was a run, and then suddenly realized that he has made a mistake. It was an absolute faux pas. One thought I had in mind at that point in time was that if you have actually decided to call it wrong, and then just run, then just sacrifice, because he had to run to the danger end. He has played the shot, and as soon as he played the shot, Virat was not going to ball watch. He was only watching his partner. He committed to it. And then you just threw him down the river. So if that is the case, and Kohli is already set on whatever 71 odd runs, you should have perhaps sacrificed your wicket.
Yeah, it's that flash of a moment, instinct, judgment call that a batsman has to make, Tom. And we're all looking at it from here and saying, why is Rahane not just running himself? If he gets run out at the non-strikers, then so be it. Look at what's happening. Look at how set Kohli is, who's in a bigger position to impact the game. All that is what we're thinking sitting afar. Can you understand what happened there? Had you been coaching a school team and this had happened, would you have had a word with Ajinkya Rahane and said, why didn't you just run?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, these things happen, even in Test cricket, as it's happened today. Yes, it's happened to a significant player, but at the end of the day, you can't blame Rahane for instinctively calling yes and then no, and then realising in that split second that he's left his partner high and dry. You could sort of argue the point, he should have then thought of running to sacrifice himself. All the mess has been made. So I think, these things happen. You've got to accept them. But One thing I find really interesting out of this whole incident, to me, it was building, and it started to build during the Pujara-Kohli partnership, where there was a number of singles that were missed that was frustrating Kohli. One thing I've noticed with Virat Kohli and a lot of great players that play all three formats very, very well is they bring an intensity to all those formats. The speed of white ball cricket, he's transferring that into Test cricket where strike rotation, the best example on the Australian side is a player that's not playing is David Warner. He will run with the same intensity and intent in a Test match as he would do in a T20 match. And Kohli's the same. And he didn't have that partnership and relationship with his partners today where he could boss it between the wickets. And that's very much part of his DNA as a player. He's not only a beautiful stroke player, and we know that he can bat long periods of time, but part of his artistry is his incredible, milking of singles and running those twos that are possibly only ones and picking up those threes. That's all part of what makes him a special player.
I'm so glad you brought this up, Tom, because this was literally the next thing that I was coming to in terms of we noticed that Pujara there was an incident, I think a couple of times just after the first break, where Kohli saw a clear single, came down. Pujara was not interested. And this, of course, comes with the history of Pujara having this odd feature of being a batsman who's run out twice in a Test match in South Africa, not the quickest, doesn't play the shortest formats. I saw a little bit of Twitter conversation after this run out, and it was, what's the need for these close singles? Akash, Tom, both of you. What's the need for these close singles in a Test match? Rahane had a scare a little earlier in the day too, where he nearly took a single and just made it back. So I'm glad Tom's here, who's been with us through the white ball series. So let me first ask you, Tom, and I'll come to Akash as well. I get the intensity point, but sometimes you need to dial it down. You need to focus on different things. Perhaps the quick single is not as urgent in Test match cricket. You can afford to just drop them off.
Strike rotation is equally as important in Test cricket as it is in any other format that we play. The risk against reward is slightly dialed down in Test cricket because obviously it's a longer game and it's a longer play. Where in T20 cricket, for instance, the risk is worth the reward purely because you're trying to maximise your total in 120 balls. So in Test cricket, it's all about what the single brings you as a batsman and as a partnership. It brings frustration to the opposition. It brings frustration to the bowler, more importantly. It challenges the bowler and the captain because you're bowling to a different person all the time and your strategy and your links and your lines are different to each person. So it's all part of the package. Pujara might be very comfortable sitting there on the end of his bat, blocking everything all day long, and no one does it better. And I'm not taking anything away from him as a Test batsman because he is an artist in his own way. But most other players that play with that intensity, like a Virat Kohli, have got that other part to their game where that rotation of strike, that movement of the scoreboard, that they feel that they're dominating the bowler, even though they're only knocking him around for singles, is very much part of them building I suppose, a challenge against the bowling attack and getting on top of that bowling attack. Where I felt Kohli at times today was in control, but he wasn't in his normal dominant control, and that's why the scoreboard dragged like it did drag.
Akash?
No, whatever Tom is saying is absolutely right. Taking singles was my lifeblood, so to speak. And I do understand its importance. Even someone like Virender Sehwag, who could actually hit for every ball that he played, was also equally keen on taking singles. But you got to also admit when two people run, you get only one run. So you have to acknowledge and appreciate and admit what is the other guy, like the guy standing 22 yards away, is bringing to the table. Can he actually run? Can he actually take those singles? If he is not going to take those singles and if he's going to run himself out, he is not one of the fastest movers. And whenever he's tried to up that intensity, as you reminded, Ronak, he got run out twice in South Africa. Absolutely unpardonable in a Test match. So this is what it is. The fact is, Pujara bats at 3, Kohli bats at 4, and they will be batting together for a lot of times. And there will be instances where those singles, you may want to take those singles, those tight ones on certain days, but Pujara is not going to respond because it is not his strength. He just cannot respond. It's not that he doesn't want to run. It's not who he is. So you will have to, because he is who he is, and he can actually win you the test series like he did last time around. You'll have to make peace with it and then find another way of scoring runs. It may not be the most pleasant way or the easiest way that you know, but then the other way has to be discovered.
Yeah, I mean, we'll never know if had it been Pujara, the non-strikers, then instead of Virat Kohli, whether there would have been a slightly less inclination to just take off immediately, like Kohli did, without batting an eyelid, trusting his partner and running. We never know what will happen. But I guess at the end of the day, this one's just one of those things that happens. It's not like the run's actually been completed and the batsman's just fallen short and we're again discussing tight singles. This is just one of those bad ones, right? And there's no way, even if Rahane runs through, I'm guessing, Akash, that he's making it.
No chance. No, yeah. Rahane wasn't making it. And see, what Tom touched upon earlier is also absolutely correct. You see, hindsight is perfect vision. I should have run. If you ask Rahane, maybe he actually will tell you in the dressing room that, I should have run and I should not have actually thrown you down the bus. But these are instinctive decisions. And as a batsman, even when you commit a mistake and it's not like a 50-50 decision where, and you don't have the luxury of time, you say no, and then you realize, oh my God, I've not done the right thing. But then so be it. So these are instinctive decisions. It's not that both guys were standing at one end and then you decide, okay, I'm the one who will go. Rahane would have gone if that was the case and if it was, it's his fault. But in this case, there wasn't enough time for him to react differently. But then, yes, maybe in India's interest, it was better if instinctively he did something else.
Now, there are two parts to this story. One is the run out itself. The second is the 20 minutes that followed, where Ajinkya Rahane has possibly lived with this. And essentially, his own wicket falls to Mitchell Starc with the second new ball, Tom. Now, I heard a little bit of Glenn McGrath on the studio coverage here in what we're getting in India, who said it didn't look like that incident left him, at least from afar, looked like his composure had gone. He's gotten out with such a big gap on a foolish ball by Mitch Starc. So can that, A, happen? B, can you compartmentalize that? Must you have to compartmentalize that because you're such a big player? It is such a big moment in the game. You're effectively the last senior recognized batsman there. But clearly, has that incident stayed with Rahane and has it resulted in his wicket or at least contributed in some part?
Look, I'd be surprised if it didn't linger, but I'd be also surprised if it really changed his approach or was a major distraction. Rahane is a player of great experience, great composure, and I'm sure, like a lot of players, when they make an error like that, it's a bit like dropping a catch. Your focus and your concentration becomes even more narrower to make sure that error is not made again. And I'm sure that would have been the case with Rahane. I think in this whole story of today, and I'm sure we'll sort of wrap up on this, is that we've got to respect that I think Australia bowled really well for a long period of time.
Oh, yeah.
They were relentless over 3 sessions, and India sort of held off for a long period of time, and it looked like they were going to break Australia's back until that run out. But Australia gave India very, very little opportunity to break away at all today, and therefore that's why the pressure mounts on, certain dismissals, whether they be run-outs or misjudgment of length, like Rahane's LBW or whatever it might be. I think everyone in that Australian attack really got it together today, and it's quite rare that you see from the first ball right to the last ball of the day that discipline maintained over a long, hard day.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're going to spend plenty of time just talking about Australia's bowling. Just close this chapter on the incident itself. Akash, any memories from your playing days of running out a very, very high-profile batsman and the thoughts staying with you while you're batting?
Well, it was my first-class debut, actually. So first-class debut, I was with my captain, the team captain, Ajay Sharma. He called for a run which was non-existent. And I just did not move. I just said, no, thank you. He couldn't make it back. And it did stay with me for a little while. And I realized that if I were to go in that dressing room, since it was my first game and he was the star vault of Indian domestic cricket, I should score enough runs to merit a place, like a place to sit. So I ended up getting a century, 150 on my debut. So that was all right. But I didn't hear the end of it for a couple of years. He would not talk to me for a while that, you should have sacrificed. If I said yes, you should have run with me. But I thought otherwise. I chose otherwise.
Tom, what's your favorite memory of running a high-profile bat out at the other end? I'm sure you've got at least one.
Well, to be honest with you, nothing springs to mind. And I'm not saying that because I was a brilliant caller between the wickets or a runner between the wickets. Put it this way, it only took me about 3 strides to get to the other end. So I didn't tend to get run out that often. But
what about the others?
I do remember getting run out. It wasn't in an international game, but it was in a Sheffield Shield final.
Yeah.
Michael Valletta, former opening bat, you may remember, ran me out when I was on 98. Absolutely burnt me. And I'm still cross about it.
What happened to those big strides then? Anyway, right. It's all good fun. But let's get the point that Tom Moody brought upon. Akash, I like that the first thing you did say is there were periods of play that, you look back at the first 2 sessions and you think, yes, India didn't lose heaps of wickets, but the scoring never would trouble Australia. And yes, we might look at bad luck for India, but there were instances, Kohli gloved one that nobody heard or saw. So there was luck on both sides. If you look back at this day, you'd agree with Tom, this is a display of top-class bowling maintained from top to tail of the day by Australia?
No, there's no doubt about it. They have bowled well. They've got the resources as well. They've got 3 fast bowlers. All are tall and they tend to do well in those conditions. You've got a world-class off-spinner, Nathan Lyon. Even your release bowler is not really a release bowler. That's Cameron Green, was bowling close to 140 clicks. So you've got a very wholesome attack to suit the demands of that surface. But I do also still feel that there comes a stage. It could be the second session. It could be the first session at some stage when Kohli and Pujara are stitching that partnership together. That you need to make a move on at some stage, because at the 80 over mark, you know for sure. See, this is what we have been discussing: pink ball, twilight, 60-90 minute period. You've got to bear that in mind, that even if it means being slightly offensive, aggressive, taking a few risks, maybe like sweeping Nathan Lyon. I saw only 1 or 2 sweeps in the entire day to just get him off the plan somewhat. So that you have some sort of a cushion when the second new ball arrives, when you walk into that twilight zone, because the records tell us that it is tough. You lose wickets, but if you lose wicket with not many already on the board, then you're on the back foot. If say Kohli was dismissed in the 77th over, India's score was 188. So just if they were going at say 3 runs and over, you're looking at 240 in 80 overs. And 240, add another 30-40 runs, you finish the day at 280. 280 for 6 would not have looked that bad. 233 is not that bad, but the fact is that's why Tom said a lot of advantage to Australia. 280, Tom would have agreed with me, a slight, only minor advantage to Australia, because the next 1 hour on day 2, if you bat well, you add another 50, 60, 70 runs. 320, 330 in modern day cricket is a lot of runs in Test cricket.
Okay, let me take Tom's thoughts on that. Would you like to see some sort of push to get the scoreboard moving, put Australia under pressure, sweep Lyon as hard as a bowler he might be to sweep Tom? Or was it just that Australia were too good, so India had to play this way?
No, I do agree with that. But what you need to do is uncover how you go about accelerating your innings. And that was, I'll bring it right back to the beginning of our conversation. And that to me starts from first gear going up to 6th gear, not going from 6th gear to first gear. So that's the point around singles and strike rotation. You look to increase the tempo of your innings through more intensity between the wickets, trying to rotate the strike, frustrate your opponent, therefore the loose balls come and you take full advantage of that against you trying to chase the game and look for those big shots. Yes, there's certain things that could have been done with sweep shots and using the feet and maybe lofting the ball over the infield a little bit more. But to me, there's a number of ways you can accelerate. And to me, in Test cricket, it's easier to do that acceleration just through a little bit more urgency and a bit more understanding between the wickets.
All right. Now, just to round up the conversation on Australia's bowlers, standout bowler of the day, wicket with the first new ball and the second. Tom, it is nice to see the best of Mitchell Starc back after a rather forgettable ODI series for him.
Yeah, well, you'd be crazy to ever forget Mitchell Starc because he's a dangerous bowler, and his statistics in Test cricket or any format for that matter will highlight how dangerous he is. So, you know, his value as a strike bowler is wonderful for Australia. given that he's a left armer as well, is a huge advantage. I felt he bowled really well, but I tell you, my bowler of the day was Pat Cummins. I just thought his relentless line and length, and I'm just putting my batting head on, and I'll be interested to get Akash's opinion on this, but his relentless line and length and threat to the top of off stump, to me, was second to none. It was world-class, and you can see why he's so highly regarded around world cricket.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the numbers. He went for a few in the last session, 30 of his 8. But before that, Akash, in the first 2 sessions of play, he's bowled 11 overs and he's gone for 12 runs and he's got a wicket. That was some spell of bowling.
Absolutely. And when you say Mitchell Starc at his best, I don't think he's still at his best. What we saw from Mitchell Starc with the new ball on 2 occasions, it was actually sensational. When you're pitching the ball fuller, the ball is shaping in nicely. But in between, we also saw Mitchell Starc just fading away a little. So he didn't really maintain the same kind of pressure, intensity, or the quality of bowling that we all associate with him. Pat Cummins, yes, definitely. Throughout the day, Pat Cummins, in the last session, I'd say Josh Hazelwood, actually, because I thought he bowled really well. Even when Kohli was there, he was probing, he was bowling the right lines, asking tough questions. The first 2 sessions, he was almost invisible. He was underwhelming, but in the last session, I thought he was the bowler to watch out for, and Pat Cummins was throughout the day for a simple reason. One, of course, what Tom has mentioned. Second is that he's bowling always with an older ball. He's not getting the new ball, and that's a slightly tougher pursuit when you talk about the Kookaburra ball. The seam goes away a little. It doesn't really swing that much in the air. We have not seen a lot of lateral movement either from this surface. So put all those things in perspective, you'll say that Pat Cummins was top class once again.
All right, you can all be divided as to which bowler you pick. That only goes to show they were also both Cummins, Hazelwood, Starc. Nathan Lyon had a big impact, big say on this first day's play. Now, before we wind up, I was actually more keen to talk about Kohli's innings itself, but the nature of the dismissal made us talk about that incident and what went on. But you take away that 74 of Virat Kohli, and it looks like a completely different day for India. So, Akash, it wasn't the usual Virat Kohli innings, bussing it and running and with lots of wickets and lots of boundaries and decent strike rate. It was a gritty innings by the captain. It had a huge impact on the day. What would you make of today's innings and how impactful it was?
Great determination. These are the facets that make him such an outstanding player. He is one of the modern greats, and he just switches it on. You see a lot of resolve, a lot of steel when it comes to him playing in white flannels. There is something about Test cricket that just excites him a lot more than one day and T20 cricket. Not that he's not brilliant in those 2 formats, but it's Test cricket, and that too against a top opposition. He loves that battle, and it was not easy going. Of course, he had to also make peace with the fact that there is Pujara. You won't get a lot of singles, so you want to boss the game, but in a very different way. The only pink ball Test match the only Test match that he's going to play. This is the only pink ball Test match that he's played. He didn't even play the warm-up game. So for him, and the bounce was a little spongy to begin with, where he was getting trouble with the short pitch deliveries, but then he hung in there, he fought, and eventually was coming to his groove. So he just showed us all facets. If he wants to dominate, he will take you to a stage where you start bowling to his strength. But other than that, some leaves outside off, I thought was exceptional. Just knowing the knowledge of where the off stump is was critical to your success or survival on this surface, with the quality of bowling that we saw on display. And Australians, they do have plans for Virat Kohli, but he was very, very determined and disciplined.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how many times he's faced 180 balls in Test cricket and ended up in the 70s still. But Tom, how would you describe this innings from Kohli?
I'll start with the last point that Akash made, and that is around his leaving of the ball. That's the thing that really stood out for me. One thing you need to do in Australia is understand where your off stump is, and you need to leave the ball well. Kohli's been to Australia on a number of occasions. He's learnt the art of batting here. He's mastered the art of batting here, and he showed that. Yes, there was a little few moments where he's uncomfortable. Yes, if Australia went upstairs, he would have been dismissed a lot earlier off Nathan Lyon. But at the end of the day, that's how some Test innings unfold. You have a little bit of luck and you ride your luck, and he did that. But his discipline, I thought, was wonderful through that off-stump channel. Australia had a clear plan and discipline to him. and he was up for the fight. And I love also the word that Akash used, and that's steel. You know, he is such a steely character. You've got to prize him out. You've got to earn his wicket, because he's not going to hand it to you.
If only he didn't try to steal a single. Sorry, shocking part. Thank you very much.
Oh dear, I'll set you up beautifully.
I'm not going to sleep well tonight, just like Ajinkya Rahane. But it was a heck of an innings from Virat Kohli, the Indian captain, in his penultimate innings of this tour. Unless, of course, Australia lose this by an innings, in which case it would be his last tour. Any takers for that? I doubt, on our show. But thank you very much to Akash Chopra and to Tom Moody. Always a pleasure getting their thoughts on our network. More from them, as this test series has only just begun. Advantage Australia after day one of this test match series. Remember, if you're in India, in the subcontinent, catch highlights, clips, reaction, analysis, everything you need to if you miss the live action on ESPNcricinfo.com and the all-new ESPN Cricinfo mobile app. I'm sure there'll be plenty that'll be written and said about that Kohli-Rahane run-out. And, of course, there's 4 more days, you think, or at least maximum 4 more days of Test cricket that we've got in this test. We'll see you again tomorrow for coverage on ESPN Cricinfo Matchday. We'll start with our lunchtime show, and do join us then.